When 9-year-old Felicia Kononchuk heard banging on her front door, she immediately started to panic. As her angry neighbour continued to pound and shout through the door for over an hour, the terrified little girl picked up her phone and turned to social media to document what was happening and to try and get people's advice on what to do. Tragically, however, 15 minutes after posting her video to TikTok, little Felicia lost her life. Why had her neighbour been so angry to the point where he decided to fatally shoot the 9-year-old? Nine-year-old Felicia Kononchuk was born to her parents, Alina and Fyodor Kononchuk. She had one older brother, aged 14, and one younger brother, aged 4, and they lived with their father in the city of Chita in Russia. Not much is known about Felicia, but her family and friends described her as cheerful, bright, and full of life. Felicia's presence brought joy and laughter to those around her, and her mother, Alina, said that her daughter had been so cheerful and bright, never bearing a grudge, and excelling at school. She loved flowers, unicorns, and connecting with her friends and family online, specifically on TikTok. She didn't have a large following online, but she still loved to dress up and share her life with her loved ones. However, one day in February 2021, instead of posting her usual fun and happy content, she decided to share something terrifying in the hopes that someone would help. On the 17th of February 2021, Felicia's father left their house to do some food shopping at their local grocery store. He left behind his 3 children and a team of maintenance workers who were working on the living room in the family's apartment. While Fyodor was out, Felicia started hearing banging and shouting at her front door. It was their neighbour, 33-year-old DIY store worker Vasily Dunets. Vasily was known in the building due to his history of drunken violence and aggressiveness towards others. Earlier that day, he had tried to confront Fyodor about the noise that the maintenance workers were making in the flat, but Fyodor had turned him away, telling him to go and sleep because he would not speak to a drunk man and to stay away from his family. Vasily, now increasingly angry and drunk, had waited for Fyodor to leave the building and then approached the front door, starting to terrorize the children. Felicia, terrified by the banging on the front door, started to fear that Vasily would smash it down and managed to enter. She began recording a TikTok video of what was happening and saying that something bad was going on. She said, "Hey guys, I've got a harsh story. Our neighbour is drunk. He's knocking on our door, breaking it down. He's been knocking here for a few minutes now, swearing. I'm scared. I'm scared." She said that she was home alone with her 2 brothers and the maintenance workers because her dad had gone to the grocery store and she didn't know what to do. She said, "I'm with my little brother and older brother, and we have people renovating our place here. Dad went to the store. I don't know what to do. He's going to break the door down. It's too bad." She carried on and said, "I'm very scared. My heart is beating." At first, it sounded like he was kicking the door with his foot, and now that's him, he's pounding the door. You can hear it very well. My head is splitting. She carried on and said, "Anyway, he won't stop pounding, so I went to check it. That's him knocking just now. I recorded it as best as I could. I'm scared, I'll go look again." Vasily carried on shouting and banging for an hour, and Felicia continued to record, expressing her fear and mentioning that her younger brother had hidden. She said, "To be honest, he's been knocking for about an hour. I'm really scared already. It's harsh. My youngest brother just hid." As the noise started to diminish and finally ceased, she messaged one of her friends, who said she would come over so they could leave the house, go for a walk, and wait for her father to return home. While awaiting her father and her friend's arrival, she heard a soft knock at the door. Thinking it was one of the 2, she went over to open the front door. But to her absolute horror, it was none other than Vasily, holding a 12 caliber hunting rifle. As she quickly tried to shut the door, Vasily pulled the trigger, and Felicia was riddled with bullets, shot through the metal front door, hitting her in the head. Minutes later, Felicia's father, Fyodor, returned home and saw his daughter lying on the floor, covered in blood, her life slipping away before his eyes. He rushed towards her and held her in his arms, shouting to his son and the repair workers nearby to call an ambulance. As he looked down into her eyes, she said, "Dad, I've been killed." Finally, the ambulance arrived and they carried her over, but it was too late. Little Felicia was too badly injured, and the doctors informed Fyodor that his daughter had no chance of survival. Felicia tragically died on her way to the hospital. Following the heinous act, Russian authorities swiftly intervened, with Alexander Bastrykin, the head of the Russian Investigative Committee, taking charge of the investigation. When they arrived at the crime scene, they found Vasily, who was allegedly drunk at the time of the incident, still sitting on a nearby staircase. Vasily confessed to the crime and was promptly arrested, stating that he had been angered by noise from repair works at the Kononchuk's flat. The Russian Investigative Committee described Felicia's murder as an impudent and cynical killing, stating in a press release, "The 9-year-old girl who was in the apartment died on the spot." Vasily Dunets faced the full weight of the legal system as he stood trial for the murder of Felicia Kononchuk. The courtroom became full of emotions as witnesses recounted the harrowing events leading up to her death, painting a vivid picture of the terror and helplessness she experienced in her final moments. After careful deliberation, the court in Chita rendered its verdict, sentencing Vasily to 17 years in a strict regime penal colony in Siberia. Even though 17 years hardly seems long enough for destroying the life of this young 9-year-old, who still had her whole life ahead of her, regime penal colonies are known to be some of the harshest places in Russia's prison system. While the sentence brought a measure of closure to her family, Felicia's father, Fyodor, vowed to appeal the decision, advocating for a longer jail term to reflect the magnitude of the tragedy and the irreparable loss suffered by his family. He expressed his determination to see his daughter's murderer held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, advocating for a sentence comparable with the severity of the crime, stating, "He deserves at least 20 years. I just want the man to realize what he did." The aftermath of Felicia's death left her family shattered as they mourned the loss of their beloved daughter and sister. In a heartbreaking display of grief, her father shared a video from inside their apartment where you could hear him sobbing while he spoke about the tragedy. He then also posted a video of him showing where the bullets had ripped through the door, as well as the damage and blood splatter that had been left following the shooting. Fyodor later also shared an image of him and his son at Felicia's funeral, saying, "My daughter's body is in the soil and her soul is in heaven." Whilst it's easy to think, why did their father leave them alone? Why didn't Felicia call the police or her father? Why didn't the maintenance workers intervene? At the end of the day, the person we must blame is the one who pulled the trigger. And that was the monster, Vasily Dunets. This vibrant young girl's life was tragically cut short by the senseless violence of her neighbour. I can't even begin to imagine the fear she felt in her last moments. Her untimely death left a void that could never be filled, as her family grappled with the profound loss of a cherished daughter, sister, and friend. This was another shorter case, as very little information was available, but as always, it's important to tell these victims' stories so that we remember them. My heart goes out to her friends and family, and to everybody who was affected by this horrible crime, and of course, rest in peace, Felicia Kononchuk.